Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Buffalo Wings. And it is the beginning of the international free agent signing period here on January 15th, 2042 for your defending World Series champion Buffalo Wings. Just an initial programming note, this is probably going to be a relatively short episode, and it will probably be our last episode for a few days. Have some visitors coming into town to celebrate Christmas and New Year's belatedly and early respectively for the next few days. They'll be arriving in about an hour, and from a polite host matter, me disappearing for several hours to play video games and make a video is probably not the most appropriate activity for the next few days. And then from a practical standpoint, the office / guest room where my computer is located and where I do these videos is moving from office duty to guest room duty, so I would not just be disappearing from visitors for an extended period of time to make a video, but I would also be sequestering myself in someone's temporary home away from home for a few days to do that as well. So probably the last video until towards the end of the week. Big focus is going to be the international free agent signing period. Made some decisions on what I'm going to do there. Appreciate the small amount of feedback I've gotten. I know it's a busier time of year for people, so not really expecting as much interaction in some of these videos as we've had with others. I had hoped originally that we would go all the way through the start of the next season in this episode, but I think that's unlikely. But hopefully we'll make some progress in international amateur free agency and walk through our decision making on that front. So turning to the beginning of international amateur free agency, and I think we're going to follow a strategy similar to what we did a year ago, where we come in a little hot compared to the demands on some players that we like. Last year we got the two guys that we kind of liked the most for the money we had to spend with this strategy. Certainly not expecting it to work that well every time, but it did work a year ago, and this is another international amateur free agent period where there's not just one player that jumps off the page to me that I think we want to put every dollar on. So as far as the pitchers, I agree with Wyme943 that Harrison Olatunji, who's looking for $800,000, is the way to go. Could be a 2 to 5 pitch guy, depending on how that change curve and knuckle curve develop. So I would hope that over time, especially with his good work ethic, ultimately, and in the good coaching we have in our farm system, and the big investment we make in player development, that ultimately he'll have enough pitches to be a starter. And we think his stuff could be a bit above average with really good movement and well above average control. So with him looking for $800,000, we're going to come in a little bit hot at $1.05 million and hope that maybe we can lock him up without getting into a bidding war. And we're going to follow a similar strategy with a couple of batters as well. Nelson Rivera, 16-year-old out of the Dominican, also looking for just $800,000. Really like his speed, another guy with good work ethic. Looks like he could be a pretty good contact hitter, slapping extra base hits all around the field with enough home run power to keep people honest as well. So we're going to offer him exactly the same, $1.05 million. Come in a little bit hot and hope that between Olatunji or Rivera, perhaps we can lock one of the guys that are on our favored list up early. In last but certainly not least, Ezekiel Salazar, only looking for $1.3 million. He's one of, according to our scout, 2 5-star potential players in the draft. Like his durability, looks like he could be a competent-ish third baseman, pretty decent defensive first baseman, and he could play a lot of other positions. A guy who looks like he could have a nice balance between contact and home run power. So with him looking for $1.3 million, we're also going to come in very hot on him at $1.75 million, since we've got the money to spend. Get those three offers over what people are looking for out there right now. The other kind of thing left open in the last episode that Jackhammer Possessor opined upon was the fact that we once again can negotiate with Dave Shreve, the center fielder who we talked to a few months back. Says he's looking for $1.8 million, but at this point says he'd sign with us 1 year, $1.54 million. And I get the point. I brought this up initially that Shreve, to me, with his combination of defensive skill and ability to hit home runs and durability, is a very valuable player for around $1.5 million. But all I'm going to do if I sign him to this artificially deflated contract is try to flip him. So it feels a little gamey to me to try to take advantage of signing him, since I'm really just going to be looking to move on from him. And the reason I decided that I'm just going to be looking to move on from him is when we look at our potential team for next year. Mitch Houlihan is a left-handed hitter. Luis Comaduran is a left-handed hitter. And Ishmael Velasco is a switch hitter. And those are the only three left-handed hitters or switch hitters that we are definitely going to have on the 26-man roster next year, as long as they are healthy. So for our fifth outfielder spots, I've got three guys who are left-handed hitters that are prospects that are competing for that spot. One of them is Tylen Hotaling. He's hit over 300 the last 3 years in AAA Albany, only gotten 16 at-bats in the majors over the last 2 years, though. But he is certainly in the mix to be that final player on our 26-man roster, and another left-handed bat to give our manager a little more flexibility. And the guys who fit a similar profile and will be competing with him for that spot are Luis Nava, who we picked up in the Bobby Bolig trade from Colorado a couple years ago. Had a solid year, respectable year, I guess, in Albany this year in his first full year in AAA. Like his defense, like that he's a good bunter, like that he's got a little bit of speed. He just hasn't proven an ability to hit incredibly, but we'd like to see what his left-handed bat looks like in camp. And then there's one other young left-hander that we have in the mix here on our 40-man roster who is an outfielder, and for some reason I'm blanking on who it is. Is it Canales? Okay, it is Canales. Edgar Canales, a 23-year-old, hit 285, 25 doubles, 6 triples, 16 homers, AAA Albany last year. Another left-handed young outfielder, pretty good range, pretty good speed. I don't think that Canales, Hotaling, or Nava are actually better than Shreve. I think Shreve is certainly a better player right now, but given that we're only looking for a fifth outfielder and I really want to add another left-handed bat onto my 26-man roster, I think one of those three youngsters, barring something really weird happening, like our former player Bobby Bolig deciding that he's going to sign for about $3 million rather than the $12 million that he's looking for right now. Barring something like that happening, the last spot on our roster is going to go to one of those left fielders. I guess, there's an argument for me to pick up Shreve now in case there's an injury in spring training and he would be playing a more prominent role. If I felt there was a chance that we could sign him to multiple years, I'd be more inclined to do it. but you can see he's still pretty sour on our negotiations after we had tried multiple times to get him to sign a multiple-year contract. He cut off negotiations with us for an extended period of time, and I think he's only going to want to sign a one-year deal. So given that we're just going to sign him to a one-year deal and flip him, again, he's such a bargain. It just feels a little gamey for me to do that. So not that I'm not above gaming the system when it will benefit me, but in this case, I'm going to go in a different direction, even though I do like Shreve, and I think he's going to be a good bargain for whoever ends up signing him. And as we start moving forward with the episode, you can see we've made minor league contract offers to several people. Still waiting to hear from the young catcher Juan Ramirez out of Cuba. And Olatunji and Rivera apparently are still thinking about our offers. Salazar apparently already favors that offer, even though we just made it, and I don't think he's sent us an email saying that he likes it, but apparently it was good enough, and $450,000 over the $1.3 million that he was looking for, that it made a good impact on him. Of course, no guarantees that someone else isn't going to come in with a $2 million plus offer and make him much less favorably disposed towards the initial offer that we made to him. And I guess we did get an email saying that he likes it. So we're going to start simming ahead and see if we can finally get Ramirez signed and see what happens with some of these international amateur free agents. And in an unsurprising development, both Salazar and Rivera have already come back to us and said that they prefer packages from other teams. We still haven't heard about the pitcher yet. Not a shock. Felt like we were pretty lucky last year when two offers like this worked out and we got the players locked up early. We'll see if maybe we can still keep an offer out there to one of these guys, see how much Salazar is looking for at this point. $3.2 million. We could fit that in with the offer that we made to the pitcher if he ends up signing with us for that amount. But we'll see if Rivera perhaps is being a little more realistic. $1.9 million. I like both of these guys. Our scout thinks Salazar's a 5-star guy. We're going to give him $3.25 million. If he accepts it, we'll bring him on board as our big money signing for this free agent international amateur period. And if he says that he wants more, we'll pivot quickly to somebody else. And since the last time we checked in, Olatunji told us he liked our offer. He's since come back and said that he wants more. Says he's looking for $2 million right now. So we're getting to the point where we're going to wait and see what happens with Salazar. If we end up signing him, it means that we'll get neither Olatunji or Rivera. But if Salazar rejects us, hopefully we'll have the opportunity to pivot to one or both of those players before they've signed with somebody else. And we've gotten Ezequiel Salazar signed for that $3.25 million. So it's not necessarily what we thought we were going to be doing when we started this out just a few days ago in game time. We're hoping to kind of spread the money out a little more evenly and maybe get a couple of guys we liked. But he's a durable guy who looks like he could have a well above average contact and home run bat. Our scout feels like he's one of the highest potential guys in the entire pool. And he also has the ability to be very versatile defensively. So I don't think it's a bad guy for us to lock up. Certainly, I think he's a good guy for us to lock up if you think about the fact that he is, as I said, at least according to our scout, he was one of only 2 5-star potential guys in the entire pool. That leaves us with only $1.5 million left to spend at this point, though, so we'll have to be a little more selective in how we try to put that money out to get another player or two signed in the coming weeks. And a guy we mentioned when we went through the 10 prospects that we had most recently had in camp in our last episode was Juan Giron, who's only looking for 180,000 supposedly, or that's what he was looking for at the start of things. Like the high leadership and work ethic, he's quite honestly a guy who we think is competent defensively and competent offensively if he fully develops. So in a perfect scenario, probably a fourth or fifth outfielder for us. But he's still not looking for too much money right now. So we're going to put a $200,000 offer to him and see if maybe we can get Giron signed up. And then we would likely look to spread the rest of the money we have available out among multiple players, or perhaps even use it in a trade with another team down the line if there's still some bidding wars going on in a week or so and there's not anyone that we're all that interested in. And some good news here. Juan Giron says that he likes our offer, and Juan Ramirez has signed with us. I'm going to be paying $4.5 million for the 23-year-old out of Cuba next year. More than we'd love to have potentially on the books for a guy who will now be auto-renewing at that amount. We've got to put him on our 40-man roster first. But it does give us some optionality at the catcher position. We've got money to spend this year, and it's only a one-year commitment at this point. And it's conceivable if our coaching gets something out of Ramirez and we get his contact up 5 or 10 points from where we think it is today, with that combination of a really good eye, really good defense, and durability, he could end up being our catcher of the future. At the very least, it's not a free option. It's a $4.5 million option to have him in the minors this year. But bringing Ramirez on board will allow us to do something with the three catchers that we have on our roster at this point. And I know that some of you are big fans of Mr. Jorge Berrios. I've always been a little cautious around him, despite his incredible ability to draw walks and his decent ability to hit home runs, because of his very average defense as a catcher and his less than average personality. So my plan is to go with Houlihan as our starter while he's healthy against right-handed pitching. Miller will be our backup and likely start against left-handed pitching, since I prefer his defense and we're trying to be a win-now team. So that means that we can shop Berrios. And I mentioned in the comments to a previous episode that there was a offer out there for Mr. Berrios that was intriguing to me. Now, this was a couple weeks ago at this point in game time, so I don't know that it will still be available. But if it's available, now that we have gotten Mr. Ramirez signed to be our likely starter in AAA, and a guy that we would bring up if we had some injuries, if the offer is still out there, it's something that I'm probably going to execute on. And unfortunately, it is still out here. So the Pirates have offered us Frode Broders, a Dutch first baseman who supposedly is the number 29 prospect in the game. Now, he's 24 years old, so he's a bit older. Only hit .238 with 7 homers and 425 at-bats while making his major league debut with the Pirates last year. So definitely was a below-average offensive player and a replacement-level player overall. But think he could play a competent first base down the line. And he's also a left-handed hitter. And if that contact improves and that home run power improves, right now he's just competent-ish against right-handed pitching. But I think he could be a pretty interesting bat against right-handed pitching in a few years. As I mentioned, we're in a situation where I'd like to have another left-handed hitter or two coming up. And Broders still has 2 option years left, importantly, as opposed to Berrios, who we conceivably could be losing if we tried to sneak him down into AAA and didn't have him on the 26-man roster. Now, I think that number 29 prospect ranking for Frode Broders is a little bit inaccurate, because when you look at the top 100 prospects here, according to the official BNN ranking, Frode Broders is, I don't even think, in the top 100. So I guess I'm assuming that's the ranking of, it's not even our scout either as far as overall potential. So I have seen, some inconsistency in the rankings, but someone has Frode Broders, and I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Someone more familiar with Dutch and Europe may tell me if how poorly I'm pronouncing that, but someone has him number 29 on their list. That seems ambitious to me. I don't think he's the number 29 prospect in baseball, but I do think he's a guy who could be a useful left-handed hitter, especially for us at first base in a couple of years, potentially, when we might be needing to move on from Mr. Rojas as he gets older and remains relatively expensive. So I'm going to see if we can maybe get anything a little extra out of that trade. But this is the one that I've kind of had my eye on. I was hoping Frode Broders would still be available. And with Ramirez in our system, and the fact that I just am somewhat biased against mediocre to average defensive catchers, and I also don't like Berrios' personality, I think I'm going to try to get this trade done. And we've got a deal together. We're going to be saying goodbye to Mr. Berrios. I definitely know this will be an unpopular move with some of you. Berrios, over the course of 400 big league at-bats, has put up a 110 WRC plus. So with that really good ability he has to draw walks and his ability to also hit home runs, he's proven to be a useful offensive player. But the defense is certainly on the low end of players that I want on my roster as catchers. And he does have some negative personality traits. But I think we're getting decent value in return. We've talked about Broders. I don't think he's an incredible prospect, but I think he is a potentially pretty useful left-handed hitting first baseman / DH. Like the work ethic and the spark plug personality. And as I talked about, he's a guy with a couple of option years left, so we can give him a full year in AAA this year, which he really hasn't had. It looks like in 2040 he probably had some injury issues. That's odd. Oh, because he also spent most of the year in Altoona. I thought that was 2039 there. So now he's durable, so he hasn't had a lot of injury issues for some reason. I thought that he only played 28 games in 2040, but if I would look at things, I would know that he played 112 games in AA that year before those 28 games in AAA. But maybe give him a full year in AAA because he's been, over the last year and a half between AAA and the majors, a below-average offensive player. We think he's still got a fair amount of development that can take place as far as his home run power and his contact ability. And the fact that he could end up being a pretty useful bat against right-handed pitching, and we can stash him in the minors, is attractive to me. We'll also get a little bit of cash in return, and also a left-handed reliever, Josh Johnson. View him as just organizational depth. He's a guy who does still have 2 option years left. Did pitch in the majors a little bit last year, was not successful at all. But if we have a bunch of injuries, he's a guy who we could bring up and be the last arm out of our bullpen if we need a lefty in a pinch over the next couple of years. So not an entirely worthless player. So we are going to go ahead and say goodbye to Mr. Barrios since we've now got Ramirez in our organization. If Ramirez does not work out for us the way we want to, we could be in a very interesting situation at catcher next year because as I've talked about, Houlihan is going to be a free agent, Miller is going to be a free agent, and Barrios is no longer a member of our organization. So if things don't work out with Ramirez, could be some pretty interesting decisions that we have to make this coming off season. But I'm hopeful that if he learns how to make a little bit better contact, he could be a pretty useful catcher. The eye's not quite where Barrios was, but I think the rest of the package compared to Barrios with the better defense, the durability, makes up for the fact that his eye is just very good and not world class. And Juan Giron has been looking for more money from us, but still think that it's right to try to sign him. So we've been focusing on that. Harrison Olatunji also signed with Arizona. We'll see what he ended up going for. $2.5 million. So I liked him at $800,000. We could have gotten there if we hadn't signed the third baseman, but we decided to go in that direction instead. Right now we're just kind of involved trying to scout some of our minor leaguers, see where we stand with our farm system as we get closer to the preseason beginning in just a couple of days. The offer right now for Giron is up to $500,000. That's still outstanding. Still waiting to hear on a few of the minor leaguers that we've made offers to kind of bolster our farm system as well. So I think we'll sim up the next couple of days until the preseason begins and then call it an episode. And we've made it to the start of the preseason, so as I mentioned at the outset, we will call it an episode here. Got one international amateur free agent signed. We're still in negotiations with Giron. We have a potential catcher of the future signed in Ramirez, interested in seeing what he can do for us in the minors this year. And we've traded away a catcher of the past and potentially in the future in Barrios for the great, potentially Dutch prospect, who hopefully will be a big-time left-handed hitting first baseman for us down the line. So a relatively short episode, but a relatively eventful episode. As I mentioned, probably not going to be too much for us or from us for the next couple, 2-3 days. Dave Shreve is still out there, so I could obviously revisit my thought with him. Looks like he's still looking for $1.54 million. Those of you who think I should pick him up and flip him can keep letting me know that in the comments. I kind of walk through my rationale of wanting another left-hander on the Major League roster for this upcoming season. Still got about 2 months until the season begins, so in our next episode we'll dig deep into the preseason. We'll go through spring training. We'll figure out what the 26-man roster is going to look like, and we will break camp for the beginning of the 2042 season. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.